The suburban house stood serene under the soft glow of twilight. It was a picture-perfect home with a manicured lawn, white picket fence, and an aura of normalcy. Inside, however, the walls concealed a storm brewing within the lives of its inhabitants. Sophia Bennett, a stunning woman in her early 30s, carried a glass of wine to the living room, her every step deliberate and graceful. Her husband, Michael, watched her from the kitchen, a faint smile on his lips. They had been married for 8 years, and to the outside world, they were the epitome of a happy couple. But Michael had begun to notice changes in Sophia. She was more distant, more vibrant in unexpected moments, and often lost in thought. That evening, while Sophia excused herself for a book club meeting, Michael decided to follow her. His instincts had been gnawing at him for weeks, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Sophia drove to a downtown hotel, a place far removed from their neighborhood's prying eyes. Michael parked discreetly across the street and watched as she entered the building, her confidence unshaken. 30 minutes later, a man joined her, a tall, dark-haired stranger with an athletic build. Michael's heart sank as he saw Sophia greet the man with an intimate kiss. Hours later, Sophia returned home, her face glowing as if lit from within. Michael pretended to be asleep, his mind racing with betrayal and questions. Who was the man? How long had this been going on? The following night, Sophia excused herself again, this time claiming she needed to meet a colleague for a work project. Michael's suspicion was undeniable, and once more, he followed her. This time, she went to a dimly lit jazz club. Michael's breath caught in his throat as he saw her enter the club and meet a different man. He was rugged, with a confident charm, his laughter filling the air as Sophia leaned in close. Michael's fists clenched at his sides as he watched Sophia share moments of intimacy with the second man. He was consumed by a storm of emotions, hurt, anger, and a dark urge for revenge. Later that night, back in the quiet of their bedroom, Michael stared at Sophia as she slept soundly beside him. She was unaware that her secret had unraveled, that her web of deceit was no longer a mystery. Michael's thoughts churned with plans. He would make her pay for her betrayal, and the two men who dared to steal what was his would not be spared. As the first light of dawn broke through the curtains, Michael resolved that he would not confront Sophia immediately. He would play the long game, biding his time to exact a revenge so devastating that none of them would see it coming. Michael woke up before the alarm, his eyes bloodshot from a restless night. He moved silently through the house, watching Sophia in the kitchen, humming a soft tune as she prepared breakfast. She was radiant, her cheeks flushed with an energy he hadn't seen in years. It wasn't for him, though, and that fact gnawed at him. "Big plans today?" he asked casually, sitting at the counter. Sophia turned, a faint shadow of surprise flickering across her face before she masked it with a smile. "Just the usual. Errands, gym, and some work calls later." Michael nodded, pretending to be indifferent. "Let me know if you need anything." Her smile lingered, but her eyes darted briefly to the clock on the wall. He saw it, the slight tension, the telltale signs of her carefully laid lies. By mid-afternoon, Michael had positioned himself in his car a block away from their house. He had planted a GPS tracker on Sophia's car that morning. When the small red dot on his phone moved, he followed. Sophia drove to a secluded park outside the city. Michael kept a safe distance, parking behind a thicket of trees. He watched as she walked toward a man sitting on a bench, a man he recognized from the jazz club. They exchanged quick glances before heading down a wooded trail. Michael followed on foot, his heart pounding, adrenaline sharpening his senses. He reached a clearing just in time to see them embrace, their movements charged with unspoken passion. Sophia kissed the man, her fingers tangled in his hair, and Michael's chest tightened as rage bubbled inside him. That night, Michael didn't sleep. Instead, he worked. He researched the two men, Jackson, the dark-haired man from the hotel, and Eric, the rugged jazz club companion. Both had social media profiles that painted pictures of ordinary lives. Jackson was a successful marketing executive with a reputation for charm, while Eric owned a small art gallery downtown. By morning, Michael had a plan. He wouldn't simply confront them. He wanted them to feel the slow, creeping dread of their lives unraveling. Sophia's routine remained predictable, and Michael used it to his advantage. He began shadowing her and the men, documenting their meetings and unraveling details about their lives. One night, after Sophia left to meet Jackson, Michael visited Eric's gallery. The man was there, setting up for a new exhibit. Michael introduced himself as a curious potential buyer. "This piece," Michael said, gesturing toward a large abstract painting, "it feels chaotic, full of secrets." Eric laughed, unaware of the double meaning in Michael's words. "That's exactly the point. Life is chaos, isn't it?" Michael smiled, his grip tightening on the glass of wine Eric had offered. "It certainly is." By the following week, Michael had laid the groundwork for his revenge. Anonymous messages began arriving at Jackson's office, hinting at a scandal involving an affair with a married woman. Eric's gallery began receiving strange phone calls, cryptic whispers about his personal life and accusations of unethical behavior. At home, Michael acted as the picture of a supportive husband, careful not to let Sophia sense the storm brewing. He even encouraged her outings, saying, "You deserve to enjoy yourself more. Don't worry about me." Sophia, unaware of his double game, smiled warmly, thanking him for being understanding. The first crack appeared 2 weeks later. Michael sat in his car across from the park where Sophia met Eric. This time, the interaction was different. Eric's posture was tense, his arms crossed as he spoke to Sophia. She gestured animatedly, her voice rising enough for Michael to catch snippets. "What's going on?" Sophia demanded. Eric shook his head. "Someone's been digging into my life, Sophia. Weird messages, calls, everything's falling apart." Sophia paled. "Who would do that?" Eric's gaze hardened. "I don't know, but I need to step back from this. I can't risk everything I've built." Sophia's pleas were in vain. Within minutes, Eric walked away, leaving her standing alone in the clearing. Michael watched her return to her car, her shoulders slumped and her face drawn. He smiled coldly, his plan already in motion. One man was out of the game, but there was still another to deal with. Sophia paced the living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Michael watched her from the doorway, sipping his coffee with feigned disinterest. Her agitation was palpable. Her perfect world was beginning to crack. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Sophia paused, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just work stuff. Nothing to worry about." Michael nodded, pretending to accept her explanation. He knew better. Eric was out of the picture, and now it was time to turn his attention to Jackson. That evening, Sophia claimed she had a late meeting. Michael followed her again, this time to a sleek rooftop bar in the city. He parked across the street, his eyes fixed on the elegant figure of his wife stepping into the building. Inside, Jackson was already waiting for her, his confident charm on full display. Sophia greeted him with a warm embrace, but there was a tension in her movements, an unease that hadn't been there before. Michael observed from a distance, his phone in hand. He snapped photos, careful to capture every stolen touch, every lingering glance. He had plans for these moments, plans that would ensure Jackson regretted ever crossing paths with Sophia. The next day, Michael began executing the second phase of his revenge. He compiled a dossier of Jackson's private life, complete with incriminating photos and fabricated evidence of financial misconduct. Using an anonymous email account, he sent the information to Jackson's boss, hinting at an impending scandal that could tarnish the company's reputation. At the same time, Michael began leaving subtle clues for Sophia. A single red rose on the windshield of her car. A cryptic note in her purse that read, "I know." Each gesture was designed to unsettle her, to make her question whether her secret was safe. Sophia's anxiety grew with each passing day. Her once flawless facade began to crumble, and Michael relished the sight. She became jumpy, her eyes darting around as if searching for an invisible threat. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Sophia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression darkening. "Everything okay?" Michael asked, his voice deceptively calm. "Yeah," she murmured, quickly locking her phone. "Just a client." But Michael had already seen the name flashing on the screen, Jackson. Meanwhile, Jackson's life was spiraling out of control. The anonymous accusations had reached his wife, and their once stable marriage was now on the verge of collapse. His boss had called him into a tense meeting, demanding explanations for the supposed financial discrepancies. Jackson was unraveling, and Michael savored every moment. One night, Sophia confronted Jackson in the parking lot of the hotel where they usually met. Michael, hidden in the shadows, watched the scene unfold. "You're pulling away," Sophia accused, her voice trembling. "What's going on?" Jackson ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "Someone's targeting me, Sophia. My job, my marriage, everything's falling apart. I can't keep doing this." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You're just going to walk away? After everything?" "I don't have a choice," Jackson said coldly. "This isn't worth losing my entire life." He left her standing in the dimly lit lot, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Michael felt a surge of satisfaction. The second man was out of the game, and Sophia was now completely alone. Back at home, Michael found Sophia sitting in the darkened living room, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. She didn't look up as he entered. "Rough day?" he asked, his tone casual. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. "You have no idea." Michael sat beside her, feigning sympathy. "Whatever it is, we'll get through it. Together." Her lips trembled, and for a brief moment, Michael almost felt a pang of guilt. Almost. That night, as Sophia slept fitfully beside him, Michael began planning the final phase of his revenge. He had broken her lovers, but now it was time to break her, and he would do it in a way that ensured she could never recover. Sophia woke to the sound of Michael humming softly in the kitchen. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air, but the usual comfort it brought her felt distant. Her chest was heavy with unease, a lingering sense of dread she couldn't shake. Michael greeted her with his usual warmth, handing her a cup of coffee. "Morning, love. You look like you didn't sleep well." She forced a smile. "Just a lot on my mind." Michael nodded, his expression sympathetic. "Maybe you need a break. Let me take care of you for a change." Sophia hesitated, then nodded. That would be nice. But beneath his kindness, Michael's thoughts churned with cold calculation. Today, he would push the final pieces of his plan into place. Sophia spent most of the day at home, pacing and checking her phone. Both Eric and Jackson had gone silent. She felt untethered, her secret world crumbling. She tried calling Jackson again, but the call went straight to voicemail. Meanwhile, Michael was in his study, reviewing the final steps of his plan. He had one last message to send, one that would tie everything together. That evening, Sophia received an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line made her stomach drop. "I know everything." She opened it with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the contents. Attached were photos of her with Jackson and Eric, detailed accounts of her meetings with them, and a message that chilled her to the core. "You thought you could keep your secrets hidden. But the truth always comes out. Meet me at the place where this all began. Alone. 9 p.m. Sophia's heart raced. She couldn't involve Michael. He could never know. She quickly deleted the email, grabbed her coat, and told Michael she needed to run an errand. "Be careful," he said, his tone calm. "It's late." She nodded and left, unaware that Michael was already one step ahead. Sophia arrived at the park where she had first met Eric, the chill in the air matching the dread pooling in her stomach. The park was deserted, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. "Hello," she called out, her voice shaky. A figure emerged from the shadows. Michael. Her breath caught in her throat. "Michael, what are you doing here?" He stepped closer, his face calm but his eyes cold. "Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing." Sophia froze, her mind racing. I came here for some air." Michael laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Don't insult me, Sophia. I've been watching you. I know everything." Sophia's world tilted. "Michael, please, let me explain." "Oh, I don't need your explanations," he interrupted. "I've seen it all. The lies, the sneaking around, the men." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't care?" Tears streamed down Sophia's face. "I made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you." Michael's jaw tightened. A mistake? Was it a mistake the first time? Or the second? Or every time after that? Sophia sobbed, her knees buckling. "Please, Michael, I'll do anything to make this right." He stared at her for a long moment, then knelt down so their faces were inches apart. "You don't get to make this right, Sophia. You tore this apart." Back at home, Sophia sat in the living room, trembling. Michael had driven them home in silence, his face a mask of unreadable emotion. "I won't leave you," Michael said suddenly, breaking the heavy silence. Sophia looked up, hope flickering in her tear-filled eyes. "You won't." "No," he said, his voice cold. "But things will never be the same." As he walked out of the room, Sophia felt the walls closing in around her. She knew Michael wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Upstairs, Michael sat at his desk, a small smile playing on his lips. His revenge was almost complete, but there was one final act left to play, a revelation that would shatter Sophia's world entirely. He opened his laptop, pulling up the final email draft. It was addressed to Eric, Jackson, and Sophia's closest friends. Attached were the photos, the details of her affairs, and a video Michael had secretly recorded of her begging for forgiveness in the park. Michael hovered over the send button, savoring the moment. "This," he murmured to himself, "is just the beginning." The morning after Michael's confrontation in the park, Sophia woke to an eerie silence. The house was still, almost unnaturally so, and her heart raced with unease. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, only to find it missing. Panic set in as she searched the room. Downstairs, Michael was seated at the dining table, his laptop open and a fresh cup of coffee in his hand. On the screen, Sophia's phone was mirrored, every message and call notification visible. "Good morning," he greeted her without looking up, his voice calm yet laced with venom. "Michael," she whispered, her voice shaking. "What are you doing?" He gestured to the screen. "Cleaning up the mess you made." Sophia's legs felt weak as she slumped into a chair across from him. "Please, Michael, don't do this." Michael leaned forward, his eyes cold and unyielding. "Do you even understand what you've done? You humiliated me. You destroyed our marriage. And now, you think begging will fix this?" Sophia's phone buzzed on the screen, a call from her friend Emily. Michael clicked decline without hesitation. "Emily?" Sophia asked, her voice desperate. "What did you do to her?" Michael chuckled darkly. "Oh, nothing yet. But don't worry, she'll find out soon enough. Along with everyone else." He turned the laptop toward her, revealing an email draft. It was addressed to everyone in their social circle: family, friends, colleagues. Attached were photos of Sophia with Eric and Jackson, along with detailed timestamps and locations. Sophia's breath hitched. "You can't send that." "Please, Michael, I'll do anything." Michael tilted his head, feigning contemplation. "Anything, huh? Funny how people only say that when they're cornered." Michael closed the laptop and stood, towering over Sophia. "Here's the thing, I could destroy you right now. With one click, everyone will know who you really are." "Michael, please," she sobbed, grabbing his arm. He pulled away, his voice sharp. "Save it. You didn't cry when you were sneaking around. You didn't cry when you were kissing them. So don't cry now just because you got caught." Over the next few days, Michael kept Sophia in a state of constant dread. He didn't send the email but left her guessing when, or if, he would. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped. Every knock on the door made her flinch. At work, Sophia found it impossible to concentrate. Her colleagues noticed her distracted demeanor, and whispers began circulating about her sudden change in behavior. Meanwhile, Michael continued his quiet torment. He sent anonymous texts to Eric and Jackson, cryptic messages that hinted at the chaos he'd unleashed in their lives. Jackson had already lost his job due to the fabricated financial scandal, and Eric's gallery was suffering from a series of fake negative reviews that tarnished his reputation. One evening, Michael invited Sophia to sit with him in the living room. She hesitated, but the weight of her guilt and fear left her no choice. "I've been thinking," Michael began, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Maybe there's a way forward for us." Sophia's eyes lit up with cautious hope. "There is." Michael smirked. "Yes. But it comes with conditions." "Anything," she said quickly. "You'll cut ties with everyone involved. No more secret meetings, no more lies. You'll do everything I say, when I say it. And you'll never, ever question me again." Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will. I promise." Michael leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Good. Because if you don't, that email gets sent. And trust me, you won't have a single friend left to turn to." But Michael's revenge wasn't as complete as he thought. Unbeknownst to him, Jackson had pieced together the source of his downfall. After losing his job and confronting Sophia, he had begun digging into Michael's background, searching for any skeletons that might shift the power dynamic. Eric, too, had his suspicions. Though devastated by the smear campaign against his gallery, he wasn't ready to let Michael win. The two men, connected by their shared ruin, met one evening to compare notes. "This isn't just about her," Jackson said, his jaw tight. "He's pulling all the strings." Eric nodded. "So what do we do about it?" Back at the Bennett household, Michael sat in his study, savoring his victory. He didn't notice Sophia standing outside the door, her face pale but determined. She had overheard his phone conversation earlier, a detail that shifted everything. Michael was hiding something. And if she could find out what it was, maybe, just maybe, she could regain some control. Michael sat in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, savoring the calm. He believed he had won. Sophia was under his thumb, Eric and Jackson's lives were in ruins, and his plan had unfolded perfectly. Or so he thought. Unbeknownst to Michael, the storm he had orchestrated was beginning to turn against him. Sophia's fear had turned to anger. She had spent weeks under Michael's control, but the cracks in his facade were starting to show. His smugness, his calculated cruelty, it was all a mask for his own insecurities and darkness. That night, while Michael slept, Sophia opened his laptop. She had memorized his password long ago, a detail he had overlooked. Inside, she found a folder labeled Revenge Plan. Her breath caught as she opened it, revealing meticulously compiled evidence of his schemes against Eric, Jackson, and herself. Emails, fake reviews, doctored photos, it was all there. But what shocked her most was a folder labeled Affair. Inside were photos of Michael meeting a woman she didn't recognize. The dates were recent, overlapping with the time he had been tormenting her. Sophia's hands trembled, but her resolve hardened. She wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Meanwhile, Eric and Jackson had put their differences aside to confront their shared enemy. They pieced together the timeline of Michael's actions, linking him to the scandals that had upended their lives. Jackson, with his connections, hired a private investigator. The results were damning, evidence of Michael's financial improprieties at work and proof of an affair with a woman named Lisa, who happened to be one of Michael's subordinates. Eric and Jackson decided it was time to confront both Sophia and Michael, but not before ensuring their own safety. They compiled everything into a dossier and left it with their lawyer, ready to expose Michael if he retaliated. Sophia sat at the dining table when Michael came home the next evening. Her demeanor was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. "You're home early," Michael said, setting his briefcase down. "We need to talk," Sophia said, her voice steady. Michael raised an eyebrow. "What about?" Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Michael opened the door to find Eric and Jackson standing there. His face twisted in confusion, then anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" "They're here because we're all tired of your games," Sophia said, standing behind him. Michael turned to her, his expression darkening. "What are you talking about?" Sophia crossed her arms. "I know everything, Michael. Your revenge plan, the lies you told, the lives you ruined. And I know about Lisa." Michael's face paled. "You don't know what you're talking about." Eric stepped forward. "Oh, she does. And so do we." Jackson held up a thick folder. "This is everything we've gathered on you. The fake reviews, the anonymous tips, the financial fraud. It's all here." Michael scoffed, trying to regain control. "You think anyone will believe you? I'm the victim here." Sophia's laugh was cold. "No, Michael. You're just a bitter man who couldn't handle the truth. But now, everyone will see who you really are." Michael's attempt to turn the situation in his favor failed spectacularly. The dossier Eric and Jackson had compiled found its way to his employer, Lisa, and the social circle he once sought to manipulate. Within days, Michael was suspended from his job pending an investigation. Lisa, learning of his vindictive nature, cut ties with him. His carefully constructed life crumbled as the truth came to light. Sophia, meanwhile, filed for divorce, using the evidence of Michael's actions to ensure she walked away with the upper hand. Eric and Jackson, while scarred from the ordeal, began to rebuild their lives. The shared experience forged an unlikely friendship between them. Months later, Sophia stood in her new apartment, the sunlight streaming through the windows. She had finally regained a sense of peace. The scars of Michael's manipulation remained, but she was stronger now, determined to live on her terms. Michael, disgraced and isolated, left the city, his reputation destroyed. For all his meticulous planning, he had failed to account for one thing. When you push people to the brink, they push back. And Sophia, Eric, and Jackson had done just that. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like this video for more true crime video. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. Take care and see you in the next video.